some people ask me, do I miss performing? And I don't really. I loved it. And actually, you've seen me give speeches and things. I guess I'm still performing, really, Rodney.
You're a great showwoman. So it's like it's all. I mean, you are, and it's lovely. I mean, I think it's
honest. But I had a good run as a singer, and I really love doing it. But I love what I'm doing now.
Hello, everyone. This is Rodney Veal, the host of Rodney Veal's Inspired by Podcast. And I'm super excited this morning to have a conversation with Kathleen Clawson. And Kathleen is the artistic director of the Dayton Opera, which is a part of the Dayton Performing Arts Alliance. Full disclosure, I am on the board of DPAA. But what I love about having Kathleen on as a guest is we interviewed her not even her first week on the job for the art show and ThinkTV and CET Connect. And so, I've had the joy of watching her work her magic and turn Dayton Opera into really, honestly, a really fun and exciting artistic and theatrical experience, because she is full of life and joy, and it's just a fun person to be around. So Kathleen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Rodney. It's great to be talking with you again.
Awesome. Not considering that we just met yesterday.
Again, right?
Absolutely. Kathleen, what I love is, like I said, it is truly heartfelt, because I just think you just have brought such a joy, and just you are brimming with ideas. But I thought, oh my God, where did this all begin? And it kind of feels like this is your life, but where did it begin? Like, what were your ambitions as a child? Was it always music?
Well, my family is very musical. I grew up in a family that music was an important part of it. My parents moved from Birmingham, Alabama to Albuquerque, New Mexico in 1956 for my father to take a job at Sandia National Laboratories. But he was an amazing singer his whole life. His dad was a pianist. His family sang. My mother sang. When we would travel across the country in the unair conditioned car between Birmingham and New Mexico every summer, all we did as a family was sing. So that's always been a part of my life. But because my father, it was his avocation, it was his joy, I never really considered it as a career. I studied languages in high school. I studied French, and I love languages. It's one of my big passions. I also studied theater. My first goal was to be a musical theater performer. Oh. Yeah. But I started school really as a French major, but quickly changed that to trying to get a musical theater degree. And 103 years ago, when I was an undergraduate, there were no musical theater degrees. So I studied both music and theater. And now all those skills that I learned taking all of the tech classes and stuff really are paying off. Who knew?
Who knew? Absolutely. So
I ended up getting an undergraduate. I quickly realized that both theater and music wanted my soul. And since I only had one soul to give to my undergraduate degree, I decided to cast my lot into music. And that journey has been really, really wonderful. The long story short, I married very young, and my husband said, if you're going to be on the road all the time, home needs to be someplace I want to be, and that's here in Albuquerque. So we always made our home there, but I've traveled all over the world. And one of the places I traveled was to Dayton to be a soloist with the symphony.
When was this?
That was in 1999.
Oh my gosh.
And that was when the symphony was still performing in Memorial Hall.
Oh, that's a flashback. If ever there was one.
And I remember, truly, this is going to sound weird, but I remember walking around the city while I was there for the rehearsals, and I literally thought I could imagine living here. Dayton felt so much like Albuquerque to me, a city that's passionate about the arts, has a big Air Force base, has a big university, and a really warm, welcoming community. And then now, look, here we are.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I
Oh.
made my career as a singer, a classical singer. Actually, a little bit of musical theater too. We can come back to that.
Oh, absolutely.
And
you
then,
know I am.
And then I said I married young, and when I was about 40, actually, I said, "Gosh, I'm forgetting something. What is it? Children." And fortunately, everything worked out really well, and we had a beautiful son. And I decided I wanted to travel less and be home more. So the University of New Mexico offered me to teach voice for a class in the theater department.
Okay.
So they said, "We'd like you to come for 2 weeks and teach voice to the actors." And I said, "Well, that's not how learning to sing works. I'm here in town. Why don't you have me come once a week for the semester?" And I did. And it was a huge success, both for me and for the singers, for the students. We loved it. And they then asked me, they said, "We have this class on the books called Musical Theater Workshop. Hasn't been taught in a really long time. Would you like to teach it?" And I said, "Well, what is the class?" And they said, "Anything you want it to be." And I said, "I am there." So I started teaching the class, and the first semester there were 14 students, and the next semester there were 40.
Wow.
We realized there was a need that had not been met, and started doing that, and it was really, really fun. And then I realized if those students were going to really learn what they needed to learn, they needed to be on stage. So although I had not directed before, I directed a production of The Pirates of Penzance because I knew it really well, and it had lots of roles for young people, and it was free, public domain. I could do it. So the risk was not so great. And I realized I had more fun than I'd ever had as a performer.
Right.
Because if you're the director, you are never bored.
That's so true. Okay.
You're not off stage waiting for somebody to call you on. You are involved the whole time. And I love doing it. And I had performed at the Santa Fe Opera at this point, and I had some of my colleagues from the opera come down and see the production. They said, "You're really good at this." So they hired me to work with the apprentice singers. And for the last 22 years, every summer, I have directed scenes for the Santa Fe Opera. And through my contacts there, other people in the country saw my work as a director and started hiring me. I came to Dayton I think it must have been 2007, to sing with the symphony again. And Tom Banks came backstage and said, we'd really love to have you sing with Dayton Opera. And I said, I am transitioning from that part of my career, sort of leaving my career as a singer behind and really throwing myself fully into stage direction. So here are some people that you've hired that I have worked with. Call them, check me out, see what they say. And he called me the next day and offered me the job to direct The Elixir of Love in 2008.
Okay.
And after that, on opening night of that performance, he came up to me and said, "Which of our operas would you like to do next year?"
Wow, that's a compliment.
It was a compliment. And then invited me back to direct a show every year after that. When it came time for him to retire, the search committee invited me to come talk to them about sustainability and what other companies were doing in the country and how to build audience. And so they brought me out. I prepared, because you do that. And while I was in the midst of this presentation, one of the search committee said, "Is this a job you'd be interested in?" Which, frankly, I had never even considered.
Really? You hadn't considered this kind of?
Had never considered it, because my path really is. This was not what I planned. None of this was planned.
I call that, it wasn't on my bingo card of life. So
right, exactly. It was like, okay. And then I said, "Well, tell me what this job is." And they did. And then 2 weeks later, actually, they just decided to offer me the job. That it was better to have a candidate that they knew, that they trusted, that knew the organization, could come in, running. And let me just let this sink in. That was January of 2020.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
So I said yes, and then the world changed.
And it absolutely did.
And I still wake up every morning, usually saying, "I am the right person for the job right now."
Wow.
I believe, well, you've probably heard me say it a million times. I have some core beliefs. And the first one actually is that I believe singing can change the world.
Wow. Yes.
And I believe that because it changes us.
Yeah.
Both, physically it changes us. It makes a physical change. As a dancer, just the act of doing it changes you.
Absolutely. And and I love that you have these core principles. Keep going. I'm loving this.
And so then, just as I believe that that's primary, I also believe that every voice is important. And by that, I don't just mean singing voice, but I mean the spiritual, the voice within you, what you have to say. Every voice is important. And that the stage should look like the world.
Wow.
So those are the principles that I use to guide what I do, both in selecting material, in casting, in life. Those are the principles that I try to live by.
Wow. And it shows. Do you know what? That's why I have a big smile on my face, because it's like every time I have a conversation with you, Kathleen, and every time you've talked about the opera and you've talked about Dayton and you talked about the DPAA, it's always been from a sense of joy. And now tying it to these core principles makes the most sense to anyone who is experiencing the opera, the Dayton Opera currently. That's coming through. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel it.
Great.
And I can see it, and I'm seeing it manifested. And so it's one of those interesting things about, because we talked about, it's not on your bingo card of life and these opportunities. And one of the things about inspiration, this podcast we're inspired by, is hopefully that people understand that it's not intentional. They're like, I am going to be this thing, but rather here are these opportunities. And so it seems to me like you just have that kind of personality and your core beliefs that's just open.
I think that's true. I never cared about fame ever. That's not important to me. I just care about connection.
Wow.
That's really, I think that at the core, opera is storytelling. That's really what it is. And actually in life, I think that's our connection, is telling our stories. That's what we're doing. That's what you do. My way of doing that is a kind of, let's just say, bigger way than most people.
Kind of more epic.
Yeah.
More epic way of telling stories.
Let me get my tiara here.
Absolutely. I love it.
But I actually have my tiara on.
Oh, sweet. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I believe that the experience of opera, because it's storytelling through music, has, as I said, just because singing has this way to sort of get to us physically, and listening to singing, listening to music, we experience opera in a different way than you experience a theater piece,
or even a dance piece by itself,
or a dance piece. Well, I don't know.
We're going to talk about that.
Okay. Because it's this synthesis of all the art forms. There's the music, there's the orchestral music, the singing, the words, the visual spectacle of it. I do a lot of opera education. I'm so passionate about education. My husband actually thinks that at my core, I'm a teacher. That's really that's what I am. That's if I excel at anything, that's what it is. And I try to bring people to the art form by pointing them to different things to look at. Especially if you've never been to an opera before and are a little afraid of it. It's like, well, guess what? It's just music and storytelling. Now, if it's in a foreign language, that's another layer to deal with. But essentially, the music that you're hearing tells you what you need to know, and even if you don't know what people are saying.
Absolutely. And it tells you what to feel.
Yeah. The stories of most operas are not that complex because they have to leave room for the music. Most of the time, there's not a lot of words. There's words that are repeated because the composer gives different meaning or will highlight words throughout a song or aria, as we say. So it's easy to go and you could go and just close your eyes.
Right.
Experience it. Or I always say, listen to just the orchestra. Listen, because the orchestra is a character in opera. Listen to what the orchestra is telling you. There's so many different ways to experience the art form. I also believe something that I know that you love. I believe that there's many entry points into the art form.
Yes.
So American musical theater came out of European operetta. That came to this country. Operetta came to this country, and musical theater came out of that tradition. So this really just like stepping, not even into a different room. It's just like taking a step to the side to between musical theater and opera. So if people say, musical theater, it's not opera, I feel like saying, hey,
know the history.
Well, also, I always think, so everybody here, I now know I'm learning about football.
Well, welcome to the Friday Night Lights of the Midwest. Yes.
And the thing is everybody has their team, and I understand if your team opera and your team musical theater, but they're both football. So, well, that's a weird analogy. Is that
a weird analogy? Because it's in the same arena.
Maybe I didn't complete that pass, but anyway. So yeah, I should never use sports analogies, but anyway.
Yeah, you're fine. You're all good.
But so I've incorporated musical theater into the programs that I am choosing for Dayton Opera, partly just to bring people in the door and to make something that they might think is scary a little less scary. Here's something that come try this. Oh, listen to these voices. Aren't they amazing? Wow, you might want to try this. So it's just a way to invite people into the conversation, as it were.
I love the fact that you do that, because what I was going to say is that a lot of people don't understand is that when I went to grad school at The Ohio State University, I have to say otherwise I will get, hate mail. Like, so ridiculous. That one of the classes that we were taught about incorporating computer design and technology within our performances. The class was taught with the notion that opera was the first multidisciplinary art form,
Pretty
and
much.
that we were looking at operas and how they were originally first staged and produced to figure out how to incorporate different technologies. And a lot of technologies were invented for the theater because of opera.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, my mind was blown, and so I think that was like the start of my pathway to kind of really appreciating opera. That's one of the things that I think demystifying opera, because a lot of people see it from a distance, but you got to get in there and experience it.
Well, the art of being an opera singer, or the journey, it's an art that is passed down from artist to artist. Yes, everybody goes to the university, they take classes, they learn sort of fundamentals. But just as is the case, I think, in any profession, the real work happens on the job, OJT. And working side by side with professional singers, you see what they do, you learn a lot. So we have the Dayton Opera Artist in Residence, and I care so much about nurturing the next generation of artists. I had incredible mentors who showed me the way, and I feel beyond obligated. It's my life, part of my life's journey. To my purpose is to share what I have learned from my mentors with the next generation, and uplift them and try to help them navigate this sometimes really difficult career. Helping them realize that there's a place. I believe this with my whole heart. There is a place for all of us in the world of the arts. And you don't have to, it does not have to be your job for you to express yourself in these art forms. We have the Dayton Opera Chorus is mostly people who just live here in Dayton, many of whom actually studied music in school.
Right.
They really did that. But because it's challenging to make a career in the art form, they have other jobs.
Right.
But just like my dad, they had their full-time job doing whatever it is that they do. But at night, they are singers and artists. And to me, actually, that's one of the big reasons why I fell in love with Dayton Opera, is I fell in love with the Dayton Opera Chorus. I love these
Really?
people. I've been coming here since 2008, and I kind of joked that it was like I had two families.
Wow.
I had my family in New Mexico, and I had my family in Dayton, and it still feels that way. I mean, the community here, the people that I know here, I have really deep and wonderful friendships, because I'm just going to say, salt of the earth here in Dayton, salt of the earth. People who take care of you and take care of each other. It's amazing.
Absolutely. And what you brought, coming to the family, which La Familia, is that this is, like I said, the joy. I mean, the fact that your passion for the art form was so evident from our conversation the first time I met you. That I was just like, oh, this is just a ray of sunshine and joy. And you really started a journey for me to kind of embrace adding the opera performances to my life. And
I think
you saw that for me. You kind of opened my eyes up even more.
Well, so you were there to see Charlie Parker's Yardbird.
Yes, I did, and that changed me.
So my first season as artistic director designate was 2020, 2021.
Right.
And that was the season that had to be completely rethought. That was to have been Tom Bankston's final season. And we were doing a world premiere of an opera about Catherine Wright to culminate his his season, and he was doing Don Giovanni and La Traviata, and it was supposed to be a big celebration. And then
COVID.
Then we couldn't be together. So from New Mexico, with people here, we produced a piece called Postcards from Dayton. I was the producer actually for that from Albuquerque.
Really? Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay.
And so that we could, so that there was something for our audiences to watch. And it was pretty, rudimentary, I'm going to say. It was kind of like music video, but we shot it at the cemetery and at the Dayton, at the Masonic Center, and at the arcade, which wasn't even completed yet.
Right.
And then on the Schuster stage. So we did 4 different locations showing about beautiful Dayton along with operatic music. And I was really proud of it. And it was, in some ways, it was sort of a little bit of my heart in Dayton, these wonderful places. It's such a beautiful city. And then there were because this community is so amazing and this organization and its supporters were just all in, we were able to do 2 live performances of opera when no one in the country was doing anything.
Wow. Yes.
That year, they did a socially distanced version of Don Giovanni and La Traviata. Mm-hmm. And there could be, because of social distancing, there were less than 200 people in this 2,000 seat theater. But we did it. And the musicians got paid. We kept it live. There was live music happening when no one else in the country was doing it. And we moved the premiere of Finding Right to my first season, because a world premiere deserves to have a real world premiere.
And an audience, and it really did.
Absolutely.
It deserved that. Yeah.
So my first season started out sort of, it was different because we did Elixir of Love, and then we ended up with Finding Right. So my first full season doing what I'd planned started out with Charlie Parker's Yardbird. And I was so excited to be able to bring Martin Bakari, a Yellow Springs native.
Yes. It was fabulous. It was fabulous, people, by the way.
His Dayton Opera debut.
Wow.
In a story, as I said, and when I mean that everybody's voice is important, what I mean is that everybody's story is important.
Yes.
And that I've got to reflect my community in the stories that I'm telling. And the really great thing is that contemporary opera gives me lots of opportunities to do that. And with only 4 things that I'm going to produce every year, I know not everything is going to be everyone's cup of tea. Mm-hmm. But I hope that it's a menu of things that everybody's willing to try. My mom always said, just try a bite, just taste it at least.
Absolutely.
Just try and taste it. Don't make a decision without having tasted it. Don't say, I don't like that, until you've come and tried it. Because guess what? You might just love it.
And I did.
I'm so glad. Really proud of that. I'm looking forward to have Martin back.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be super fantastic. And I love how you talk about that, like take a bite, because I think that sometimes we get so siloed in our beliefs that we have our loves. I mean, I will always have my passion and love of dance. It's always going to be, I tell people at the station, like, yeah, I'm going to start with dance. It's always going to be a thing, but I'm also very curious about other art forms. And I feel really strongly, you can't make dance in a vacuum. You can't make art in a vacuum. You can't make music in a vacuum. You have to bring all of our worlds need to come into it, and our experiences in the world. And when you talk about contemporary opera, there seems to be this resurgence of new voices.
Yep.
And people that are willing to do this new work. And it's thrilling personally, artistically. I just want audiences to take a chance on those things.
Absolutely. And I feel like we can even bring that to the old works, as it were. Look at a new way to tell one of the classic opera pieces. That's my hope, is to refresh, kind of reboot some of the classics in the repertoire. One of the really amazing things about our organization, the Dayton Performing Arts Alliance, is that it is the opera, the ballet, and the Philharmonic under one umbrella, and that we truly collaborate in a very exciting way. Especially, Brandon is so amazing.
What? Oh, he sings your praises, by the way.
Well,
It's a lot of love,
his as well. So it's really exciting to be able to collaborate with the artistic directors in this big organization to create art that other companies can't do. For example, this season we're going to end with Verdi's Aida, sort of the grandest of all grand operas.
Talk about multimedia experiences.
It's going to have everything. No elephants. People always ask. I'm just going to say right now, no elephants. That's not what the story is about. And we're going to have the full Dayton Ballet and DC.
Fabulous. So, I love that.
Often the ballet in Aida is either not there at all if a company doesn't have access to the ballet, or it's lessened, truncated. But we're going to have all of it. And we're going to have a lot of people on stage, again, trying to do my best to represent the whole community. People that maybe don't know Aida, it's set in ancient Egypt, and a story about a war between Egypt and Ethiopia. And the princess of Ethiopia has been captured during this war, and is in Egypt, and is a servant to the princess of Egypt. And because it's an opera, both women are in love with the same man. It's not going to work out well for somebody, at least. But
always in a love triangle. There's never love triangles don't work, people. Just FYI.
Because of the locale and the story that's being told, I made a decision to cast all Black artists in the principal roles for both the Egyptians and the Ethiopians, because that's the story of who these people are.
Wow.
And so people here in Dayton will hear some of the most famous, some of the most incredible Black artists working in opera today. I'm really excited about the cast.
I'm excited for you. It's a beautiful opera.
And our new artist, the incoming conductor for the Philharmonic, Kitara Harada, will be conducting. So it's going to be a exciting piece. So again, it's a standard work in the repertoire, but people are going to be able to see it in a new way.
I'm Bonnie Miles, Membership Coordinator of CET. Thank you for listening to Rodney Veal's Inspired By. This podcast is a production of CET and ThinkTV, two local PBS stations. As PBS stations, the work we do online, on air, and in the community is supported by listeners like you. If you're enjoying the show and would like to support our work, please consider becoming a member at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org. Plus, when you sign up to donate at least $5 a month, you'll get access to special members-only streaming videos on the PBS app through Passport. Learn more at cetconnect.org or thinktv.org.
If you're enjoying this conversation, The Art Show, also hosted by Rodney Veal, is available to stream anytime from anywhere on YouTube or the PBS app.
You are walking the talk. And so we're seeing a manifestation. When I saw Bird, and I realized how thrilling it is to tell that story in this way. And so I'm excited for your this notion of telling the story of Aida with folks who represent truly legitimately those cultures, and without there being a suspension of disbelief, so to speak. And so it must be really thrilling to be in this place in your life where you get to do that walk the talk.
Well, so one of the things that I get to do here in Dayton is I get the big box of crayons.
Oh, you described that. Yes.
As a kid, when you either have, I used to always have to share the crayons with my brothers, but it's really exciting to get to color with all the crayons. And this organization brings so much to the table that we're able to create visually exciting productions. We can bring in really great artists. My connection through Santa Fe, because for the last 22 years I've worked with the apprentice program in Santa Fe, I have close relationships with like 20 years worth of young artists.
Wow.
So I've been following. And the other thing that I always say is that because I work with them all summer long, I don't just hear them do one aria, going to New York and hearing one or two arias. I get to hear them sing all summer long. I get to know what they're like as people. I get to see them on stage really doing what they do. Mm-hmm. And so the people that I've been bringing in a lot of them are artists that I've worked with in Santa Fe, that I know them as people. And what I keep hearing from the cast is, we have so much fun together. We like being together. And I said, well, yeah.
Well, you make it fun. I mean,
yeah, I'm not going to cast somebody who's not having fun doing their work.
Yeah, you don't cast divas. Come on,
no.
That's just
well,
no.
I mean, I might. Here's what I always say: you absolutely have a right to be a diva about the art.
Oh.
If it's about the art, you have a right to put your foot down and make demands. If it's about something like, what color of M&Ms you have in your dressing room, you don't have the right for that. But if it's about the art, you have to earn that right.
Oh, thank you. Say that to the cheap seats.
You earn the right to be a diva. And start out as a diva, you have to earn the right. So anyway, yeah, it's again, never boring to be a stage director. Working in this organization is hard.
It is, but satisfying. I would hope.
Satisfying. So satisfying. The work is never done. I wake up every morning with a list that's longer than it was the day before, but
wow.
But it's thrilling. It's really thrilling. And I love this community so much.
Oh, this is such a joy because, it has been, well, Mike knows this, and our producer. Yeah, we've been producing, talk about love of our community. We've been producing segments on a segment on the 8/4 Memorial and interviewing all the artists who built the memorial and survivors of the shooting, the mass murder, basically. All of them have held on to the belief that this community is so amazing and resilient and wonderful in spite of the darkness. And that, hearing you talk about the joy of opera just made me remind me, like, this is why we're all fighting to make this community great.
Absolutely. Well, Rodney, it's clear that there's darkness everywhere.
Yeah.
But we are called to be a light in that darkness and to reach out to each other and find what connects us. Mm-hmm. And I know that art has that capability to, I during the most contentious times in our country, when I do a lot of lecturing at the Santa Fe Opera before before performances, and I say, you know what? You're going to be sitting in a theater next to strangers, and you all will be laughing at the same jokes and crying at the same things that make people cry. If we can experience that in a theater with strangers, we should be able to come together to solve the issues of our country. Because in our hearts and souls that are experiencing this art, we're the same. So instead of looking for the differences, let's look for what's the same. And I really believe that art helps inspire empathy. It's one of the reasons for it. It inspires empathy, and that should be what guides our walk every day.
Wow. So I always ask this question because, like I said, this is inspired by podcasts. What would you tell someone who's considering walking this path and journey in opera? What would your advice to them be?
As a performer or as a listener?
Both. Let's hit both points. I'm like, it's a podcast. We got time.
Sure. So as a performer, as a participant in the art form, I would ask the person every day to be clear about what it is that they want and what they need. And realize that that's going to change day to day. And sometimes you set yourself on a path and you think, this is not working out for me. What am I going to do? And as I said, I do believe that no matter what you end up doing to make your money, your passion can always be this. I don't believe that your passion has to be your job. So it's good if your job doesn't crush your soul, but your passion, everybody needs a passion. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I would say is everybody needs a passion, works for both performers, participants, and audience. Okay. Everybody needs a passion. And just as you said, we already know what we like, or at least we've experienced things that we like. Look at, just turn slightly and say, what if I tried this? This might be fun. And opera is usually not something that you're going to be hooked on the first time you see it, I'm going to say. Sometimes it is, but not always.
Right.
Because there's so many different, it's like art. There's so many different kinds of art. Some people are inspired by landscapes. Some people are inspired by abstract. Everybody likes something different. Keep trying, keep going, keep experiencing, be open to whatever these different art forms have to offer you. And again, the same thing for participants. I never, ever thought this was where I was going to end up. But I am more fulfilled and feel more artistically alive than I ever have in my whole life. And I sort of, in a weird way, feel like every part of my journey has led me to this place. Well, clearly it has, because that's how roads work. But that each thing was sort of a stepping stone for me to get where I am. But I would never have guessed it, because that's not exactly what I had planned. Not exactly what I had planned. We in our family do what they call Sixers. You know about that?
No, I don't know what that is. Okay,
the whole thing. Somebody asked Hemingway to write a short story in 6 words, and let's see if I can get it right. For sale, baby shoes never worn.
Wow.
That's the story, right? So we write Sixers in my family. Not exactly what I had planned. That's my short. There we go. Is that a happy story or is that a sad story? Well, that depends, right?
It all depends.
But really, it is all about the journey, and it's exciting. It's exciting. As I said, when I took this job and the world changed, and I thought, oh man, what am I getting myself into? I, I, it's still exciting every day. It's hard because the world has changed and people are, figuring out what they want to do. Lots of people are still afraid to get out in public. Not so many. I think that's really changing, um, but it's exciting. It really is exciting every single day. And then I just want to share briefly with you.
Absolutely. Share away.
I had a very, very important mentor in my life whose name was Marilyn Tyler. If anybody wants to look her up on the internet, Marilyn Tyler soprano.
Okay.
And she was a little Jewish girl from Brooklyn whose mother went to the Manhattan School of Music, whose mother wanted her to study organ because then she'd always have a job. But she was an opera singer and she got a Fulbright to study in Italy and went to Europe and made her life and career there. And she lived there for a long time. Her life is an amazing story that sometime we can talk about.
I can't wait.
But she, after retiring as a singer, she worked in Italy and Germany and France. She spoke French, German, Italian, Dutch, and Yiddish.
Wow.
So a conversation with her was all of those language, always. And it was amazing. She came to New Mexico to run the opera theater there at the university. And I'd long since been out of school. And she a couple times hired me to come and either stand in the wings in case a student couldn't make it through their part, or just to cover a part that she didn't have a student to do. And she became my teacher and my mentor. And she voices, something that people don't know about the singing voice is it doesn't really mature until you're in your 30s.
Oh.
And the lower your voice is, the even later that it matures. So it's like you don't have any idea really what you're going to be until you're in your 30s, which is a long time to wait to figure out,
like if it's going to really be the thing.
Right. And I actually didn't think mine was going to be that. My undergraduate degree is in pedagogy, vocal pedagogy. I always thought I was going to be a voice teacher and did teach. But I was hired to sing the Verdi Requiem. And I'd always sung much lighter things than that. And I called her. I said, I need to get your advice on this. And she played piano because she listened to her mother and she got this degree. So we sat down at the piano. She said, come with me. And she worked me through the piece. And it was as if there was a room in my house that I'd never been in before. And we opened the door to that room and I started singing that music. And I went, wow, I love this room. This room is fabulous. I want to live in this room. And she helped me sort of find this voice that I'd never used before. And once I started singing that repertoire, things really started happening for me. At the same time, that's right when my son was born, very close to that same time. And that's when I made the decision that I really wanted to be home more. And once he was born, I started going to auditions, and I would go to the audition. I'd think, oh my gosh, what am I going to do if I get this job? There's the childcare, I don't know. And all of a sudden, I didn't want it as much. And I'd go into the auditions and I would just sing. And I got everything.
Wow.
Because first of all, I had this voice that was actually, for the first time, my real voice. And then I didn't worry about the auditions anymore. I sort of let go of it. I kind of went, well, whatever happens, I'll figure it out. But I just connected to the love of singing and to the storytelling. And truly, I started just getting hired for everything that I auditioned for. And that's when I started singing Santa Fe Opera. I sang at the Dallas Opera. I did a lot of things. It was pretty amazing.
all because of that moment. This where you just let go, which is what we tell dancers all the time, Kathleen. We say once you just let go of trying to hold on to your technique, then you're going to be an artist. When you let go.
Yeah.
I can tell that you're working through your rotation and turnout and how you're going up on point, but I can see when you let go that you become an artist.
Yep.
And that's what you're telling them. Like, oh yeah, kindred spirits. Everyone in the arts. These are the same stories that I hear from visual artists, writers. We're all that moment when we just let go.
Yep. Our journeys are not so dissimilar between the art forms.
Yeah.
Our techniques and our way of expressing are different, but the journeys are the same.
Mm.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's some people ask me, do I miss performing? And I don't really. I loved it. And actually, you've seen me give speeches and things. I guess I'm still performing, really, Rob.
You're a great show woman. So it's all. I mean, you are, and it's lovely. I mean, I think it's honest.
But I had a good run as a singer, and I really love doing it. But I love what I'm doing now,
and it shows.
Thank you,
Kathleen. I love these. I love talking to you all the time. I wish we had more time to talk outside of podcast. So we'll find that time. Don't you worry. It is coming. So Thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast.
Thanks, Rodney. It's great talking with you.
Always.